உள்ளூர் நிகழ்வுகளையும் முக்கிய செய்திகளையும் உடனுக்குடன் தெரிந்து கொள்ள லோக்கல் தமிழ் ட்ரெண்ட்ஸ் யூடியூப் சேனலுக்கு சப்ஸ்கிரைப் செய்யுங்கள். இந்த வீடியோவை லைக் பண்ணுங்க, ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க, கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்க. மேலும் அப்டேட்ஸ்க்காக எங்கள் லோக்கல் தமிழ் ட்ரெண்ட்ஸ் சேனலை சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்க.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this final lecture where we're going to be discussing CRUD. Now you may have heard of this term, CRUD, before in web development, but what does it actually mean? Contrary to what you might think it means, it really stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete. And this process of creating, retrieving, updating, and deleting is inherent to almost every website. Pretty much any website with users has the ability for a user or an administrator to create content, retrieve prior content, update that content, or delete that content. Now we pretty much already know how to retrieve things by using the connection between the URLs, the models, and the views.py file. What we're going to be learning about here is more on creating, updating, and deleting information from our web application. Whenever you work with models and databases, you will need to perform those 4 basic actions, and luckily, Django has class-based views to simplify this entire process for you. We'll start off by exploring how to use the createView class. Now, as a quick note, while we are using this createView class in the programming section of this lecture, we will purposefully induce a few errors to clarify where certain variable names are coming from. So I'm not making mistakes as I'm coding along. I will actually be inducing those errors on purpose, and I'll remind you of that as we continue programming. Once we've worked through the createView class, working with the updateView and deleteView classes will be very straightforward. Another quick note, there's going to be a lot of interaction between your urls.py, views.py, and models.py file, as well as all your template files. If you ever get stuck on an error, I want you to triple check that your code has matching the notes exactly, or is matching what I've shown you here in the video lecture. The nature of the interaction between all the files is going to make it almost impossible for me to give you good help on this topic in the Q&A forums. So if you ever get stuck on anything and you're really stuck, make sure that you're actually following along with the video exactly, or just go ahead and download the associated files for this lecture. Alright, let's get started and hop over to the Atom text editor. Okay, here I am at the Atom text editor, and over on the right I also have a browser open to the page that we've been working with throughout this entire section of the course. I have the home page, and we learned how to connect templates and also inject content into this home page. I can click on schools, see a list of all the schools, select first school, and then come to the school detail page. And then I can always click on admin to go to the admin page as well. Let's go back to schools, and we'll see a list of schools here. The first thing I want to do is show you how we could possibly create a new school using createView. In order to do that, let's hop over to our views.py file under basic app, and I'm going to create a new class that, as you may have guessed, is going to be called school createView. So I will collapse this directory for a second, and before we actually get started with this, let's import the views we're going to be using. Right now we're importing view, template view, list view, and what I can do to put these in multiple lines is have some parentheses here, and anything wrapped inside these parentheses can then go on multiple lines. So I'm importing view, template view, list view, detail view. We're already familiar with those. And then I'm also going to be importing create view, update view, and then delete view. And basically what these views are going to do and help us out with is create view will help us create new additions to our models. Update is going to take an existing entry in your model and allow you to update it. And then delete view will allow you to take something that exists there and delete it. So let's start off with create view, which is going to allow us to essentially create a new school easily. I will scroll down over here, and underneath school detail view, I will say something like class, school, create view, and then we'll just pass in create view. We'll inherit from that. And then what I'm going to do under the create view is I will say model is equal to models.school. And then I will save that, and whenever we create a view, we want to make sure that it's linked to some sort of URL. So I'll bring back my directory tree and come over to the urls.py file of my actual application, and I'm going to add another line there for another URL. So let's actually edit this a little bit. Right now I have this sort of regular expression, and I'm going to simplify this. Instead of having this in brackets here, let's just make this say digit plus. And basically what this is doing is it's taking the primary key of the school as the display. And what I want to do is create a new URL link here. And this will take in as a regular expression just create /$. So what this says is if someone goes to the domain page /basicapp/create, it's going to allow us to create a new school. And here we'll say views dot school create view dot as view. Remember, we have to do that for class-based views, and we'll go ahead and give it a name. And the name we're going to give it is just create, so we can reference it later. And since I added a new item to this list, I want to make sure that they're separated by commas. Okay, so just to expand this a little bit so we can see this in a tiny bit more detail, here I've just added this URL, create views.schoolcreate as view, name is create. We're going to save that. And then what we're going to do is check it out over here, and we will get some errors, but I'm going to walk you through them so we can get a better understanding of why we're getting these errors. So I will come back to schools, refresh, and then I'll click on first school. It says welcome to school detail page. All right, so far so good. I'll come back up here to where it says basic app, and I'm going to try to go to create. I'll hit enter, and note what happens here. It says improperly configured at basic app create. Using model form mixin, base class of school create view without the fields attribute is prohibited. So that's the error I want you to learn how to read in case you ever encounter it. So basically what this is saying is, hey, you want to create a view, but you didn't specify what fields are prohibited and what fields are allowed. Well, that's easy enough to fix. We'll come back to views.py, and over here, under create, just like we did back when we were working with models, we're going to define the fields that we will allow a user to create. So the school had three main fields: the name, the principal, and location. And this almost acts like a security measure. Maybe you don't want someone to edit the location of a school or the name of a school, etc. We'll just pass in all the fields for now. Principal, and then location. And I'm going to save this. And as I refresh this page, I should see probably another error. And there it is. So template does not exist. Well, that makes sense. I never actually created a template for this school creation page. But what's interesting here is it tells you that it's looking for basic app school form. And basically what that means is that Django, that create view, is automatically creating a default HTML template that it's expecting. And it's expecting it to be in the format of all lowercase, the model name, in our case it's school, underscore, and then form. So let's add that in. And I would always suggest that you use the defaults there. So underneath templates, basic app, I will create a new file, and I will call it what it was looking for, school underscore form.html. And it makes sense that we need some sort of form for the editor or user to come in and create a new school. And let's show you how we can create this school form page. First things first though, I want to say extends from the basic app slash and then the basic app base, which was basic app underscore base.html. Okay, so that's going to allow me to extend that template. And then let's have in our body block. So we'll call block body underscore block. And since I have a block, I will say end block as well. All right, now let's actually put something here. And this is what the user is going to see when they actually try to create a new school. And I'm going to essentially think ahead and know that I'm also going to add an update view later on. So keep that in mind as I'm working here. Usually you wouldn't just know this all off the top of your head. And in this header, or heading 1, I'm going to use some logic. I'll have an if statement in my template tagging, and I will say if not form.instance.pk, and we'll explain what that means in a little bit. I will say create school. And then since I know I'm also going to add an update view later on, meaning update a school that already exists, I will say else update school. And then since I have an if, I always need to end if. So what do these lines actually mean? Well, basically what I'm saying is the following. I'm going to extend from basic app, have the body block, and the heading of this form page, that create page, is going to check if the instance of the primary key exists or not. If it does not exist, that means this is a new school, and we're going to create the school. Otherwise, we're updating a school that currently exists. And this will make more sense as we actually develop the update view. But hopefully you get the basic idea that I'm checking first, hey, does the primary of that key of that school exist? Well, in that case, if it doesn't exist, I'm creating a school. Else, if it already does exist, then I'm updating the school. And then finally, to actually update school, we need to take in, with a form, some information. And we actually just need to specify the method as post. We don't need to have a class or action here. You could have a class with this bootstrap stuff we've been learning about, but we'll keep it simple for now. As always, with any form, we need to have our CSRF token. CSRF token, and this should be underscore token. And then we're going to inject our form, as we've seen earlier, as P. And then finally, we'll say input. The type is going to be a submit button. And let's give it a class just so it looks a little nicer. Since we are working with Bootstrap, we'll say it's a btn-primary. Always nice to flex those Bootstrap muscles. And let's give it a value of submit. We'll save that, and hopefully that worked out this error. Remember, that was the school form.html, and it's really important that you have the ability to read these sort of errors. Throughout a lot of the course, we've been kind of avoiding errors to begin with, but now I really want you to get familiar and be able to read, oh, template does not exist. Well, that means I need to check out what template it's expecting. All right, let's refresh this. And perfect, we see create a school. Now let's try to actually create a school. We'll give it the name of the school, my brand new school. The principal will be, I don't know, someone named Larry. And the location, we'll say it's in, I don't know, Panama. We'll say submit, and boom, we have another problem. It says improperly configured at basic app create. And it says it has no URL to redirect to. Either provide a URL or, and this is what we're going to be doing, define a get_absolute_URL method on the model. So let's follow those directions and actually do it. Okay, so I'm going to come over to the models, and I'm going to look for school, and it told me that I should define a getAbsoluteURL method for this model. So let's follow those instructions. I'll say def get absolute_URL. And we'll pass in self. And then what we're going to do is basically reverse and tell it what primary key we want this school to be created with. So what we need to do is actually import reverse from URL resolvers, which we have seen before. Say from django.core.url resolvers import reverse. And that means I can use it down here, where I will just return reverse. And what I'm going to do here is call basic_app, the detail view, not the detail view as in the importing, but the actual detail in the views.py file. And then we need to add some keyword arguments as a parameter. And the keyword argument I'm going to pass here is pk for primary key. And the value for that is just self.pk. So let's save that. And again, learning how to kind of read and roll with the punches on some of these error codes. So it says get absolute URL method. We did that already. Let's refresh this. It may ask us to continue. That's fine. says, welcome to the school detail page. School details, my brand new school, Larry, in Panama. So what was actually going on here? Basically what happened is after we created that view, we never told Django where it should go to. We never said, oh, go do something after you created the view, which is why Django was requesting for a get absolute URL. And basically what we said is, okay, go back in reverse and figure out that you should go to the detail page or whatever the primary key is of the school you just made. In our case, this is basic app 4. Your number may be different, however. And that's the very basics of having a create view. So if I go back to the list of schools, I can see I have my brand new school and my brand new school. So the reason it's inserted twice here is because we basically did it twice while we were kind of fixing some of those errors. But don't worry, we'll fix that when we learn how to delete views. But first, let's learn how to work with update view. And a lot of the work has already been done for us since we did a lot of stuff while we were doing the create view. So school update view should actually be quite simple as well. Let's come over to views.py, and I will create a new class called school update view. And I would recommend that you name your classes basically the way I'm doing it, with the model name and then create view or update view or detail view, etc. And then I'm going to inherit from update view. And this one's quite simple. Again, we're going to specify what fields we want to be updated. Now this is where maybe you can think about, okay, who's going to be updating this? What kind of user permissions will they have? And also, what makes sense for updating a school? Does it make sense to update a school's principal? Well, yeah, that makes sense. Principals can change. Does it make sense to update a school's name? Maybe. What about the location of a school? Well, probably not. Schools usually don't move around that much. So let's just say you can only update the name and the principal of a school. Obviously, your own situations are going to be unique, and you'll have to make that call. And what we're going to do here is once we have this, we'll just connect it to the model. We'll say model is equal to models dot, and in our case, it's the school model. We'll save this, and then what we're going to do is come back to urls.py and actually set up a URL for our updating. Inside this urls.py file for our application, what I'm going to do is copy this detail view, paste it again, and this is basically the same view I want, except I want to clarify some sort of update extension. So basically, if I go to basic_app/update/ and then the number of the primary key of the school, it will let me update that school. So I need to change this from detail view to update view as view, and then I will change the name to detail to update. And then let me save that. And the next thing we have to do is actually edit the HTML file or the template file that relates to the school detail page. So let's hop over to that. And right now, this is our detail page. And it just says for the information of the school, list of students, etc. And what we will do is outside of this, in fact, let's put it outside this div, but before the end block, I'll create a new div inside its own container, and it'll just be a paragraph with an anchor tag inside of it, and this will be a URL template. And this will be a URL template that takes you to the basic_app with the name update. And we'll pass in an argument, pk school_detail.pk. And let's actually give this a class so it looks a little nicer. We'll say this is class of, for Bootstrap, we can say btn. We'll give it warning. You can give it success, whatever you want, but maybe a warning makes sense if you're going to update something. It's kind of a yellow hue by original nature, and then we actually want to have some sort of text here that tells you you're going to update this. All right, let's save this, and we'll refresh this page and see what happens. So now if I scroll down a little bit, I see this update button. And we can always zoom out so it's a little more clear. So now on the detail page, I can see this update button. You may have to scroll down depending on how zoomed in you are. And if I click on it, I get the form and the option to update the school, and only the fields that I specified, the name and principal. So let's try to change the name of the school. Actually, let's just change the principal to something really obvious, like Mr. Obvious. That should be a really obvious change. We'll submit it, and then it takes us back to that school's detail page. That's what we were working with when we said here on the href URL, basic app, update, and then pk school detail pk. That allows us to link whatever school we're actually updating with. So welcome to the school page. I can see now first school has the principal Mr. Obvious. And if I come back to schools, click on first school, I can see that that change has been permanently done. Great. So now we learned how to create views and how to update views. The last thing we need to do is figure out how we can delete views. So let's go back to our actual editor. I'll bring back my directory tree. And what I'm going to do is come over here to the views.py, and we'll create our last and final view, which is the school delete view. We'll have delete view here. And this one's going to be slightly different from everything we've done so far as updating and creating views, but it's actually not so bad. First thing you have to do is say model is equal to models.school. Connect the models, that makes sense as far as what we're going to delete. And then the next thing I have to add in is a success URL variable, or attribute, I should say, because this is a class. So we'll create an attribute called success_URL. And what we're going to do is use the reverse_lazy function. So I need to go up and import that, and I'll explain what it is right after I import it. We'll say from Django.core.URL resolvers, and it's actually from the same place where you imported reverse from. So we can import reverse or reverse_lazy. And if you're familiar with programming, you may have heard of the term lazily evaluated. And what we're going to do is all the way down here, and it's actually telling us we need to still finish that off, where it says success URL, we will call reverse_lazy and pass in that we want to go to the basic app and the list view. So what this success URL means is, all right, once you've successfully deleted a school, I want you to go back to the list page of the basic app and show all the schools. And theoretically, once you're done deleting it, that school should no longer be on that list. The reason we use reverse lazy is that we don't want this evaluated completely when running our .py file. We only want it to wait until it's actually called as a success. And as with all the other views we've been working with, we need to go ahead and add a urls.py that actually matches with this particular view. So we'll come back here to urls.py, and let me collapse this to see a little more room. And again, this is going to look really similar to update. Instead of updating something though, we're going to be deleting it. So we'll hit enter, and I'm going to change this name from update to delete. I'll change this update to delete as well. And then here where it says update, we'll change that to delete. So I should be able to go to basic app /delete and then any primary key and start getting some options for deleting stuff. But in order to do that, I should have some sort of HTML file. So we'll go ahead and go with the default HTML file that's expected, and we'll add it in right now. We don't need to see those errors anymore. And what we do is we say school_confirm_delete.html. And this is going to be the page that's actually shown when someone tries to manually delete something from the database. We'll say extends, and we're going to go from the basic app /basic_base.html file that I have here. And then let's start our block. We'll have our body block, and with any block we need to end the block. And what we're going to have here is basically just says h1, and we'll say delete, and it will automatically pass in a context object called school, or whatever the lowercase version of your model is. Remember, we previously covered how to create your own context object names. If you come back here to views and scroll up a little bit, we talked about it here, context object name. The basic one for detail, that I encourage you to just use the default, is the lowercase version of your model. So we'll use that. We expect school to be here, and what we're going to call off of it is the name and say question mark. So what this is going to show is a heading that says, hey, delete that school's name, question mark. And then we'll just have a simple form. This simple form is just going to say method is post. With any form, we always need a CSRF token. And it's going to have an input. The input will just be submit. And now we can kind of play with the classes of Bootstrap. And I've been waiting to use this a long time, but we can finally use the danger button. We don't need to actually give this a name, but we should give it a value. That way it says something. We'll just have it say delete. And below this, if you don't want to delete, we should have some sort of link that goes back to cancel, or at least some sort of text. You can have this be a button, another form, whatever you want. I'm just going to have it be an anchor tag with the word cancel inside of it. And for the href, we'll have it take us back to that school's detail page. So we'll have a URL template here that goes to basic app, or whatever the name of your application is, detail, in that URL, and then we'll say pk is equal to school dot primary key. So again, we're grabbing the primary key off that school context object that's returned just the same way we grabbed its name. Because remember that detail URL, if we go back to urls.py, over here under the term detail, we're expecting some sort of primary key to be inserted, which is why we've been having to pass it in as an argument in these HTML template files. Okay, so let's save this, and we'll refresh our schools page. And let's go ahead and try to delete school number 4, because I have a duplicate there. So up here in the URL, I will say basic app, delete, /4, hit enter, and it says delete my brand new school. And we can see here, we can click cancel, which is going to take us back to that detail page of that particular school, or I can hit delete. So let's try it. We'll hit delete, and there you go. That school has now been deleted. Let's try it one more time, make sure it's actually working. Try it on that other brand new school. And whoops, I actually need to enter this manually. Later on, you can add links if you want. Obviously, you should be very careful adding delete links all over the place. But here I am at delete/3, delete my brand new school, and we'll hit delete. Okay, perfect, it's all working. Later on, we'll also learn how to use slugs instead of just primary keys, where slugs are essentially the name of objects, lowercase, with dashes in between any spaces. And if you're familiar with web development at all, you've probably heard that term before. Okay, I hope you enjoyed learning about updating, creating, and deleting views, and I hope that this makes your life a lot easier. As you find yourself programming with larger projects in Django, you're going to be using those views all the time. And that's basically the whole point of Django, to make your life a little easier as you try to focus on what's really important, developing your own website. Thanks, and I'll see you at the next lecture.
இந்த வீடியோவை லைக் பண்ணுங்க, ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க, கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்க. மேலும் அப்டேட்ஸ்க்காக எங்க லோக்கல் தமிழ் ட்ரெண்ட்ஸ் சேனலை சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்க.